So in this demo, we're going to look at the new HTML5 Web Worker capability. This is really just a rough demo. It's the first implementation. I go back and refactor it several times. I'll comment on some of the design issues here. Really, I just want to show you the basic technology, and I haven't done much with this, so I don't think I have a complete grasp of it yet, although I do have a functioning example. So we're going to go ahead and make a simple version of our quoter feed, only this time we'll have a web worker which will feed the quotes. Again, this is a very rough, early, first version implementation, and some of the things I've done here don't really make sense. So for a start, if we look at our HTML, you can see that all we have is this single div called quote display, and the code will generate all the content for that part. Now the way this works is we create a external file, which is right here. It's called quote ww, a quoter web worker, and then we create we launch that within our regular script. So here's my regular script for the page. This is attached in the head of the document. I am using jQuery here. And so you'll notice that this is pretty minimal. I have a single variable here called workerman, which is going to be the worker object. This code here tests to see if the browser supports the web worker or not. Then this actually instantiates the new web worker called workerman. And notice this is the name of the external JS file. Okay? And then workerman has an onMessage event, and we set up a function handler. And basically what this does is it grabs the quote display in the HTML page and then adds the data that's submitted by the external function as the content. And then we have some alternative display here in case we don't have a web working browser. Okay, let's look at the code now for the quoter web worker function. And here's where I started to make some kind of hack type choices. So instead of using the external JSON file of the quotes, I just snagged the first dozen or so quotes and embedded them in the file. So this first element here creates the quote array. This works exactly the same way that I use the quote application. So the quotes have the same fields and they're basically objects. I actually just cut and pasted this from the last version of the quoter code that I wrote, but it doesn't have all the functionality. So we don't have the search or any of that other stuff. It's just really been kind of gutted. Here we have the two variables, the current quote and the new quote, and the seconds. So if you look in here, I have this method called quote feed, and this is really the rest of the file here. And so what it does is it has a variable called content, which is going to be the data that gets passed back. So the web worker will use the same logic we saw before to find a new index of the quotes. It's not equal to the current one, so we get a new quote. Then it'll build all the quote data, and again this code is identical to what we saw before in the quoter application, and it's all going to be in a single variable called content, which is a long string, which of course is a mixture of HTML markup and data values. Then this post message, this is a web worker function which actually sends the content to the code here that calls it in the regular script file. And so this will come through and you'll see the onMessage function is going to occur and pick up when the post message function here is called. So basically this onMessage function is going to grab, and notice this, event is an object that's just going to be created to take the data. So event.data will be the quote information. It'll actually be what I call content here, okay? So now basically this post message will send the content, and then this is a little strange, but the set interval is set to then call itself. It's recursive, so it calls itself. But when it does that, it's using the set interval and it's setting it for 5 seconds. So basically, the first time we call it down here, this is out of the loop that defines it. And then after that, it tells itself to call itself every 5 seconds. Okay? So again, if we come back over here, all we do is we grab the event data and assign it to the HTML, inner HTML, using the jQuery syntax of the quote display. So again, just to go over real quickly how this works, in the index.html, I have the script.js file, and that's this file here. And then the web worker is in a separate file here. Now, one of the reasons that I embedded all of this here is I wasn't sure how much of that I could externalize. So I wanted to get it to work, but then I'll go back and refactor it using agile development. And not only will I be able to use the external JSON file like I hope, but also, of course, I can use all of the quotes. So then this would disappear and I wouldn't have any of this in here. Eventually, I could rebuild the entire application to use the web workers. And you might wonder about this, and I'm kind of unclear about this myself, but basically this is all the code that I actually have here. So this web worker thing is almost like a component, and that would be kind of neat if we could reuse it in different applications, especially if it could become a draggable component in the interface. Okay, so I've been talking about this. Let's go ahead and take a look at what it actually looks like when we run it. I've got that open here, and oops, looks like I let it run way too long here. Let me try and close that. It's been running the whole time that I was talking there, so. Okay, so let's relaunch this. And we'll preview it in Firefox. So you can see right off it shows the quote, and then in about 5 seconds it starts to update the quotes. And you can see that the quotes have all the same fields that we had before. In fact, I reused the CSS from the old program, and the only thing I did was I gutted the interface that had the control buttons for doing the search and all that. Okay, so again, now I've got this web worker function. It kind of acts like a thread, and it continues to feed the quotes. All right, I hope that was helpful to you.